session. For all the participants, I think we can get to the Q&A. I would suggest if we can raise the hand using Zoom, I can call out your name and so that we just keep the session organized. Anybody who has a question, please feel free to go ahead and raise your hand. Yeah, Nishan, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Nancy. It was a very insightful, very good session. I was just writing down the exact lines you showed, and I was able to recreate them and write the exact lines just because I was able to connect with your story and remember your story, and I see the change. I don't even remember the first line, but the second part, I literally wrote down every part of it, and it still sent me. So this is very good. But my question to you is, how do we make stories instantly? Like you connect with someone, don't get the time to be prepared, or how do you put yourself into a position where you can connect in that instant with the audience? Because most of the time it will be on the fly. You meet someone and you want to convince them, or pitch something.
So there's a tactical approach. It's very tactical, which is when interesting stories happen, you make a note of it, whether it's a mental note or in your journal, like a stories journal. You want to remember this moment, you write it down. So next time you remember to tell this story. That's very tactical, and I don't really do that. But I'm able to come up with stories because I remember these moments where I felt happy or I felt sad. I just remember them. And like anything else, it's almost like muscle memory. Once you recognize that there is a need, you would very naturally remember these things, and it'll come up if you recognize that this helps.
So just to follow up, so do you think this storytelling works everywhere, like at work or with your friends or anyone you meet, or is there a different format to each one of them? Because everyone has a different focus. Everyone is interested in a different thing. Like if I'm talking to a developer in my company, he might not. He just wants to know what needs to be done, right? And
yes. So it also depends, right? The fact is, when you're sharing stories, it probably takes longer.
Yeah.
So you have to assess the situation. If the audience just wants something quick and it's a fact, and they don't have any questions on why this is important, like if they already understand the why, then you don't need to tell a story. The story answers why.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I think we have Bonnie who raised her hand. Bonnie, please go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, that was, Nancy, an amazing session. And it actually brought to mind, I just watched a video yesterday on ChatGPT where they released this and completely changed the way I thought about ChatGPT, because till then I thought it was something that kids used to finish their homework assignments. And then I see this video and they're talking about how it's going to change the world and how we think about it. And I think that storytelling really makes sense over there. So what I wanted to ask you was that as a product manager, do you find that when you're ideating about features or what products to bring out of the market, do you find that the story comes first in your brainstorming or your ideation phase, or is it that you find a way to convert tactical, strategic ideas into then feelings and concepts that people can relate with? What comes first, basically?
So typically, when we just have a gut instinct on a list of features, it's really because deep down, we know there's a problem. Otherwise, we wouldn't just come up with a list of features. Like, that's just how we're wired. Most of us are really excited about problem solving. What we're not super good at most of the time is like we just jump over the problem. It doesn't mean that we don't know the problem. We do. That's how our brain tells us the list of solutions. Storytelling is not really about inventing a new story. It's really about reflecting and look inward. Why do I feel this list of features is important? And then you want to express something that is already within you.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Nancy, I have a question. So there's two school of thoughts, right? Even for product managers as well as generally in the tech world, either you're a generalist or a specialist.
Yeah.
In your perspective, for product managers, what do you think matters most? And does it change as you grow up the ladder or as you gain more experience?
Is the question on how being a generalist versus specialist affects career growth?
No, it's more about do you have an opinion on which one is better, especially if you're trying to be a product manager?
Oh, I see. No,
Also,
I don't have an opinion on which is better. So for me, I'm a generalist because I've transitioned from industry to industry. But I didn't plan to be a generalist. It just happened that way. Now, being a specialist really helps if you're very passionate about a particular topic. But for me, at least in the early part of my career, I wasn't super passionate about anything because I didn't really know what was out there. And I was just kind of exploring and learning as I went. And that's why I started in B2B, but then I was thinking, oh, I want to try B2C. So let me try that. And that's what happened. So it really depends on whether you feel strongly of one thing versus another. And the job is always better if you have passion about it.
yeah, I have a follow-up question. I actually relate to it when you say that you're a generalist and you didn't really identify a passion early on in your career. I think that's where I am right now. Are in that place, what do you think helps to make the doors open for you? Because I feel somehow, maybe because I'm on this side of this side, I do feel like specialists have some amount of advantage because they have core knowledge or in-depth knowledge about something specific. What is your suggestion for generalists? How do you play that to your advantage?
It also depends on what the market needs. When I started out, I was first at Oracle and then I went to a bunch of startups. Because back in my day, there's not a lot of PMs to begin with. And so a lot of PMs are actually generalists, but there are a lot of specialists too who weren't PMs. They're maybe sales engineers or they've been in customer success. And then over time, they became product managers. It's because of their background. And it also depends on how the hiring manager thinks of what the team needs. So here's a real example. One of my hiring managers, he made a decision to hire a generalist, someone who understands product management, because based on his own experience, he felt that it was easier to learn domain knowledge than to learn product management. And for him, he had an easier time like teaching customers on a new concept that was domain specific than teaching someone how to be a product manager. And because of his own experience, he wanted a generalist because he felt a domain was easy to pick up. But if you're talking about a domain that's highly technical, then it wouldn't be as easy to pick up. And if you look at how Meta does the hiring, and I'm talking about, before this market downturn, Meta hires generalists because most of the company doesn't need very specialized domain knowledge, but there are parts of the company that requires very specific knowledge. Like if we're talking about AR and VR, then yes, it makes sense to hire someone with specialty. But if we're just talking about Facebook app or Instagram, it's more general. And as long as you are a good product manager with fundamental skills, you can pick up the domain fairly easily.
Thank you so much. Anybody who wants to go next with the question?
I have a question, Nancy. Hi, I'm Sadhana, and I think it was amazing to learn how you could use storytelling to convince people. But when do you think is the right time to use it? Do you think it is only meant for interviewing, or as a product manager, it's something that you could use to convince stakeholders as well? What do you think about that?
Anytime when they're asking why. And this happens in job interviews, it happens in the day-to-day. So in a job interview, the question can be framed, why do you want this job? Or tell me about a project that you led that was successful, or tell me about a time when you received negative feedback or when you were going through difficulties. Like, these questions are open-ended, and this is where storytelling can really help. And then in a job setting, of course, when you're doing a product pitch or doing a product review, when you're trying to represent your product and trying to prove that your product is important, this is where storytelling can help. And on a more tactical level, when an engineer is trying to implement a feature and they don't understand why it's important or why this is high priority and this other thing is low priority, first, you incorporate data, right? You could show data points, but then you should add a layer on top of it that adds to the raw data.
Got it. Thank you.
But just to add to that question, right? For someone who's starting out, it might be difficult to approach storytelling, I guess. How did you start out? Like, did you face any challenges, and especially to make it a habit while you're delivering something? How does that skill get acquired?
Well, it was when I was preparing for a product review, and a mentor taught me storytelling concepts because he felt the presentation was very boring and dry. And then it was basically kind of, it's tapping into a different part of the brain that I didn't even know existed. Well, maybe like everyone knows how to tell stories. Okay, so I knew that existed, but I just never applied it to work. And then I kind of like redid the presentation, and it was way better after adding storytelling elements.
Okay, thank you. Shama, go ahead. Shama, I think you're on mute.
Hi, Nancy. I was trying to switch on my video, but for some reason I'm unable to. I don't have any question, but I just wanted to have an open conversation to understand your thoughts to it. What do you think about self-awareness, and in terms of being able to create instant stories, if we start reflecting on ourselves on regular basis, as
Yes.
in if we start journaling what went well today, what didn't go well today, or how did I feel. Uh, mm, uh, Recently, it happened with me. I told a story in class, and everyone was able to connect with me.
Cool.
It was in business presentation class where we were learning the same concept. So what do you think about it? Is it a good idea to practice this?
So unless you are already an amazing storyteller, you definitely need to practice. I had to do a lot of practice. And self-reflection is huge. And in fact, you need to do good self-reflection to prepare for job interviews, for those behavioral and leadership type of questions. That requires a lot of self-reflection and articulating in a way that is clear for the interviewer to understand. Like that is all storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you.
I think you can unmute and go ahead with your question.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks for the wonderful session. This was very helpful and highly relevant for us. I had a question. So, as a product management professional, as we grow in our career, uh, moving from individual contributor role to leadership roles, I wanted to understand how does a storytelling as a technique change? So, what elements change as somebody grows in that ladder, and like as a professional, what all things we need to keep learning while we are growing as a product professional. So if you can share your thoughts on that, that would be great.
If it's about storytelling, so in the video example that I shared, where the message was, it's a beautiful day, but I can't see it. First, you have to find something that the audience connects with. So it's a beautiful day, everyone agrees with you, and then you continue on with your story. Same thing with the transportation app. It's a hypothetical app, but if I framed it in a way where most people can understand, then your story kind of stands. For example, using visuals like the traffic picture. When you see it, like you automatically associate some emotions with it because most of the time people have sat through traffic in the past. And so it's
Right.
not just me telling you how you feel, like you know how you felt in those situations. So the first step is finding something that people probably already resonate with. Like that is storytelling, is the beginning of storytelling. And that works whether you're an IC or a people manager. Now, people manager requires a different set of skills because now you're not managing product, you're managing people.
Mhm.
And people have different needs, just like users have different needs. And so you always want to frame your story based on what your team needs. So, for example, if your team is going through a hard time because, I don't know, there's a lot of deadlines or whatever, then you don't want to tell a story that is about smooth sailing and let's do more. Like that is not going to resonate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. It's just hi Nancy again, Nishan. So one question here is, so should storytelling always be an emotional connect? Because there are different kinds of storytelling where you can engage the audience, saying, you can make them laugh, they still connect with you, they're engaged with you. So and how does that vary in your career? Like, should you always be an emotional storyteller? Should you be a serious storyteller? Or should you be, someone who can engage with with a laugh? I mean, there are different ways to do it.
Yeah. So the PM job is all about adapting to the different environment. And the PM job is always about like balancing different things all the time. So I'm gonna answer your question in a very roundabout way. So let's say you join a team and you're the PM, and that team has a lot of engineers who are very technical.
Yeah.
And so you joining that team, you shouldn't get in their way. You should let them do their job. You're balancing the team out. Let's say you join another team where engineering is not super staffed and they're maybe all junior. It might make sense for you in that case to jump in and do some coding, like if you can, right? It's about balancing the team and figuring out how we can contribute. So same thing with storytelling. You want to see where the team is at, or you want to see where the audience is. What are they thinking? Where are they coming from? What's their background? What's the context that you have? Then you adapt to what your audience needs. So it's not one size fits all. You have to first understand your audience and then come up with a story that fits.
That's the difficult part. Anyone else?
Oh,
Yeah.
did somebody say something?
Yeah, I had a quick question. Could you give us a quick frame on how to shape stories to leaders and how to shape stories to people who are in our team? What is the lens you take? And I understand the broad lens and the micro lens. For example, if you have to talk to your team, you take a pretty micro lens on, hey, these are the features and this is how it connects. But if you have to talk to your leadership, you take a pretty broad lens on, hey, this is how we move the business. But anything more elaborate than this or anything that could help
When
us?
when you're talking to a team, because the team is in the details all day long, so they probably already have the same context as you. You're really trying to understand what do people already know and what do they want to hear from you? Like, what do they need from you? When you're talking leadership, they are one, not just paying attention to the business, they're also paying attention to the other parts of the business. And so, and this is a hypothetical setting, leadership team has a scope that is much bigger than you and your team. You want to understand how your team fits in with whatever their scope is. It's not just about, okay, how does my thing help the business? There's a middle layer, which is what is the scope of this leader that you're talking to? What do they care about? How does your product or feature fit in with the rest of their portfolio? Then the last step is, okay, how does it help the broader
But
business?
generally, leaders, they care about a lot of things, but I cannot link my product to a lot of things. I can only see the impact of my product on, say, some monetary metrics or some conversion metrics, and I can only shape it around my product, right?
You have to understand how your product connects to other parts of the business.
Okay.
That's actually very important
Uh,
because it's about, so for example, I actually worked on a transportation app. It didn't do like real-time traffic information or anything like that. But the org that I was in was, they also managed buildings and people, not just car traffic, but like people traffic. How many people are coming in and out? And are people productive in that area? They also, this org also cared about like restaurants and if people are able to eat good food, etc. So I needed to find a way to connect how the transportation app matters to productivity. So the way I framed it was like that snippet about giving people time back. That was helpful because like why does transportation app even matter? Yeah, you could use it to figure out which shuttle to take. But it matters because if you're on a shuttle, you could be more productive, you could do more work, you could check emails. Now it's connecting dots. So it is part of the job to understand how your product or how your feature fits in with the rest of the ecosystem.
Got it. That's pretty insightful. Thank you so much for the answers in the session. It was super helpful.
I have a question. I think we're right on time.
One last question.
Do we have time for another question, Nancy?
I can stay if you could stay. I have time.
One last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi Nancy, I'm Soumya, and my question is, while we are narrating our stories, how do you balance out the accuracy and the engagement part? And I mean, how do you really balance that? Or should there be a ratio while we are narrating our stories, or it entirely depends on our stakeholders or the person in front of us?
Sometimes when you're telling a story, you don't want engagement, especially if it's like in the middle of the story. But you also don't want to have a presentation when it's just you talking. So you have to include elements of engagement into your presentation, but you need to control where the engagement happens. So for me, I wanted your engagement during certain parts of the talk, but not in the middle of my story. And so it's up to you on planning and organizing how you want to structure your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for joining us today and for the really insightful session. I think we can wrap up the call. Do you want to share some closing thoughts before that?
Well, I really hope that you found this session helpful. I feel that it's a topic that is not talked about enough, and that's why I'm very happy that you voted on this topic. But I also have a lot of other things that I want to share because I feel like that is my mission. So I want to hear from you. I want to connect with you. Find me on LinkedIn or find me on my website.
I'm sure you'll hear from a lot of participants that attended the session today.
Oh.
Have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you, Nancy. Have a great weekend.